Hi, in this video we're going to talk about some special vector functions and then discuss how to use vectors as function arguments. The functions I'm going to talk about are front and back, clear and empty. So let's get started. I've already written a line to initialize a vector with some grades in it. So what I'd like to do is demonstrate how to find the first and the last element, or the front and the back. So we can find the first element or the front by calling grades.front. Then we can find the back element or the last element by writing grades.back. Okay, so let's run that. So our first element is, our front element's 88 and our back element is 64. So those are useful a lot of times when you're trying to perform certain tasks and you want to see what the first and the last element are. One example would be if you want to simulate the line at a grocery store, for example. You could be putting your elements into a vector and then you could realize that, okay, the front element of that is always going to be the one that's weighted on next, for example. There's other ways to do that, but that's just an example. So next we have the clear and empty functions. And let's look at empty first. Empty is actually a Boolean function. That will tell you if there are no elements in the vector. Sorry, I couldn't type and talk at the same time for some reason, although I'm usually pretty good at that. So here's a little program that's going to call empty and write out a message if the grades vector is empty, and otherwise write out a message if the grades vector has some data in it. So we should see, after the front and back, we should see the message grades vector has some data in it, indeed, because it does. So if we want to get rid of that, if we want to get rid of the data, we just call grades.clear. And clear will remove all the data from the vector, leave the vector intact, but with no data in it. So this time we're going to see the message, or we should see the message, grades vector is empty, excuse me. And there it is. Let me put this where you can see a little better. Grades vector is empty. So indeed, it did tell us that it was empty. Okay, so last thing in this video is to talk about vectors as function arguments. So let's take a look at that. Let's write a function to average the grades. So to do that, we're going to pass the vector to the function, but let's generalize that. Grades is not a good idea. I always call my vectors as function parameters vec. Okay, so now all we have to do is write a little program to find the average. So first thing we're going to do is find the total, or is define the total, which we've got. Let's just do item. Let's do element. Okay, so that will give us the total. Then we can, I'll do it out the long way. Oops, static cast that to double. And here's the advantage of a vector. We don't have to know the size in advance. We can let the compiler find it by calling the size function. Okay, and then we can just return the average. All right, so there's our function, vector as a function argument. Let's use it in a program. what I call it again? I've already forgotten. Average grades. Okay. Okay. So let's run it. And we see that the average grade is 81. If you look at the grades, 88, 71, 83, 99, 64, 81 looks like a pretty good average. Okay, so to summarize, it's very easy to use a vector as a function argument or a parameter. You just have to specify it with the data type that you're going to call a vector, give it some sort of generic name, and then use it just like you'd use it as a vector in a program. So that wraps up my set of videos on vectors, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.